Shizzle and so forth. It's time for yet another edition of the one and only Rap in the Forums, where we take forum posts, infuse them with hip-hop style, and see if they make any more sense than they originally did. Usually the answer is no, but we do it anyway. It's one from Wuta, from Senpai Dan... What the hell is that? I can't even pronounce the guild name. No one cares anyway. And it tells this thread. Players are leaving now, the TBC or is gone. Yo, yo. Okay. Let's go. It's a 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4. Hey y'all, this is not a whine, but just a report from a slightly troubled Guild Master. I am wondering if others see the same picture as I do right now. My guild is rather large, but very social. But before TBC and Loyalty, T-Play were very good. We are a mixed guild, both casual, social, but also with hardcore and game rating players. It is a difficult mix for a guild, but has worked great so far. Well, at least until now. When TBC came, almost everyone, 90% were thrilled. Everything was great, but by now we have 124 level 70s in a guild. But now something is feeling wrong, and quite a few oldies who were loyal members and happy endgame raiders are quitting. Wow, taking breaks and just going cold. Some of the reasons I am about to list are both explanations from my members and my own conclusions. But the only thing keeping a guild together, apart from the social aspect and loyalty, is that the guild has something to do together as a guild in-game, a common purpose for the guild members. In the old WoW, we all worked together, raiding 20 to 40-man instances. Teamwork was the challenge that people liked and fought for as a guild. Now when TBC came, all were happy because it's also fun to do individual tasks, but leveling to 70 was fun. For most, like a breath of fresh air. After 1.5 years buried in raid instances, and most people kept talking about the new 25-man instances that lie ahead of us. Those are the new endgame goals that will keep guilds together for at common goal to fight for. But no! Blizzard have made one mistake, and it is gonna cost them a lot of players. And yes, it is an endless line of grinding to get keys, then endless grinding to finish hero, then endless more to finally get access to the next instances. That is large enough to make a guild a goal. Don't get me wrong, I agree that every or most instances should demand some work to get into. But the problem here is that if you want to go XX, then you have to clear A, B, C, D, E, F. First is simply too much. It's too obvious that Blizzard thought, hey, TBC has to live for at least a year, and the old instances were too easy to break too fast. Let's take Karazhan. A cool instance, we are only missing the last boss, but oh well. At least 2 of our 4 to 6 steady teams are there, but Karazhan should never have been a must-clear to move on instance. It should be a standalone instance. This is the real problem in TBC. All the new major instances should be standalone. Every 25-man instance should be hard to get to, but a guild should not be forced to pass other instances to get there. They should go there themselves and discover if they are strong enough or need to go somewhere else first to train and gear up, and should not be forced to get revered rep with 5 factions or forced to complete hero mode in XX instances. No, we should go to an instance and then conclude for ourselves that we are not ready for this. We should go gear up in XX instance instead of completing 2 months. Many of you will say that it is working as intended. Maybe I like the idea that stream hardcore guilds also get a challenge now, but S and the Blizz made a bad turn, chaining way too much access upon access upon access together. They missed the message on the wall. Stop the forced grinding. Change to an alternative, but often needed. One of the great things in MMOs are that they get not liner spelled the first-person shooters, but TBC has too much of it. Before TBC, you had to do A, B, and C. Go get to D. Now players feel they have to do the entire alphabet, and many are choking on it and quitting. They don't leave my guild, they leave WoW. And it is so sad, because WoW is a fantastic game, and TBC is a great expansion in every other way. Just my 2 cents, I think many others can relate to this, and I hope something can be done about it in time. Best regards, Wuta, GM of Sampadanika on Ravencrest. Oh yes, the pain, suffering, and quite frankly inexcusable rap in the forums. Only here on WoW Radio. This is Blue Please, this is Total Biscuit. Oh yes. Unfortunately, we won't have Acid Murlocs this week because it won't export for no apparent reason. It's the curse of the Murloc. It's quite horrible, has to be said. Oh well, I'll try and get you a double bill next week and see what I can do. Right, okay. I have topics for this week. Unsurprisingly. If you have any opinions on what's going on in the show this week, themurloc@gmail.com is the place to email. That is themurloc@gmail.com. Right. Now, here's a question for you. Just how much do you seriously believe Blizz actually tests their own content? It's an interesting question. However, when you see multiple occurrences of high-end guilds banging their head against something which is quite frankly inconceivably impossible, what do you think? Do you think, oh, they just need to L2P, or do you think, they didn't really try this, did they? Now here's the concept for you. High-end guilds, are they actually being used as beta testers? And if so, just how acceptable is that? It's definitely an interesting question. You will find it. Now, let's take some examples. Let's go back in time, and find some examples. The first two bosses of Blackwing Lair when they were first released were in fact bugged and unbeatable. Here's another example. Cthulhu. Does anyone remember Cthulhu, the double I-beam of death that pretty much one-shots the entire raid? Or any other than the number of evil things. It happens. You get a boss that is too difficult. The reason it is too difficult is because it wasn't properly tested. At least that's all I can assume. I mean, surely they can't just put that in there just to slow people down. I mean, it's not even a case of being too difficult, it's a case of being impossible in many cases. It's like the double I-beam trick. That makes that absolutely, completely and totally impossible. We saw it happen, and it's happened with other bosses. Rag had the same issues, Nefarian had the same issues, multiple other bosses had the same issues. Now, apparently, Lady Vash has the same issue. A certain guild whose name I will not recount on air just yet is on Phase 3 of Lady Vash, and they found out something rather interesting. In Phase 3 of Lady Vash, 5 people in the raid are mind-controlled. They cannot be crowd-controlled in any way, shape or form. And their damage output is increased by 500%. This caused the raid to wipe in about 3 or 4 seconds. Now, let me just ask you how exactly you're supposed to deal with 5 mind-controlled, uncrowd-controllable players who have got 500% damage output and have just killed your entire raid like that. It's like Blackheart the Inciter on crack. It's horrific. Now, I can understand, yeah, that's a pretty cool idea, but when a fifth of your raid goes ballistic and does as much, if not more, damage than your entire raid put together, and it's directed at you, I mean, we're looking at one-shot situation there. Apparently, they're also uncounterspellable. So what happens if a mage decides to cast a fireball on someone? It's got 500% damage in that kind of gear. What's going to happen? Oh, yeah, you're dead. What happens if he decides to run into the middle of the raid, an arcane explosion or frost over everyone down? What the hell's going to happen then? That's insane. Now, there is a term for this. It is rather rude, so I'm going to use the other term. Rooster block. Rooster block. Something which blocks someone deliberately from continuing within the content. Now, I'm sorry, but if Lady Vash is going to have that silliness attached to it, then there's got to be, what can you do against that? Theorycraft it for me for a moment. Think through in your heads. You got a 25-man raid, just got through Phase 2 of Lady Vash, which is difficult enough as it is, and then has that happen to them. What are they supposed to do about that? Exactly. It's like, again, let's go back to an example. Blackheart the Inciter, not a particularly difficult fight, but annoyingly random. There's nothing you can do about that mind control. Nothing. It comes down to a matter of luck. See, last time I went on Blackheart the Inciter, he burnt my evocation when I was on full mana, and then spammed Flame Strike over again, and they burned 7k of my mana and my cooldown in one turn. Now, the last time, he just did nothing more than spam Ice Lance at somebody. Now, it's blindingly obvious that, that kind of random element is, while fun in a 5-man, ridiculous in a raid encounter. You can't control that kind of thing. And surely, raid encounters should be about the amount of control that you can exert over a particular encounter and the precision in which you execute a particular strategy. The more randomness you put into it, the more frustrated people are going to get. I mean, what happens when Lady Vash is on farm status, if anyone manages to beat you under those circumstances, which I highly doubt. Although I could be sent to eat my words, you never know. People will always find a way. But what happens? Are we going to have something that can never be truly put on farm status just because it's got some cheap random element to it? That's rubbish. It really is. So people were saying Kel'Thuzad would never go on farm status because it was a little bit too random, but it didn't turn out to be that way. It'll be interesting to see if Lady Vash ends up being that way. And I say, that is, from what I have heard, how the third phase of Lady Vash goes. At least as far as people manage to get into it. They died within a matter of seconds, not entirely surprisingly. You can't crowd control the people in any way, shape or form. What are you supposed to do? There may be a trick to it, perhaps. But then again, it may also be an absolute, complete, total cockblock. Yes, I just said it. Rooster block. So, let's take a few other examples of untested stuff. Did you know, this is the information that I've been given, that during beta, Gruul was never downed. This is the information I've been given. Gruul was never downed. Now, did you also know that Gruul's hit points have been doubled since beta? Now, you've got something which has never been downed in beta, yet you are then giving it a static 100% increase in hit points and expecting it to be balanced. Now, I'm not saying Gruul is too difficult, nor am I saying Gruul is too easy, because I haven't done him yet. But it does seem to me very bad form that you would ever do such a massive leap and a massive change without thoroughly testing the consequences. Now, a lot of people are having trouble with Gruul. I've been told that the Uber guilds are having trouble with Gruul after certain hot fixes, quote-unquote. Gruul is kicking the snot out of people on a regular basis. Now, it's interesting to note the comments that were made by Zarek a few weeks ago that Gruul and Magtheridon are apparently too hard. And as such, they would be nerfing him down to a kind of a Nixia level. Which is, okay, fair enough. If you're going to argue that, that's fair enough. But just how tested is this going to be? And are they using, again, high-end guilds for testing purposes? It's pretty ridiculous, in my honest opinion, that they can't internally test this kind of thing. Now, why can't they internally test it? Is it because their 25-man testing team isn't good enough? If they knew the encounter back to front, then surely they'd be able to take it down. If they know everything that's going to happen and when it's going to happen. There is a degree of precision involved, but then again, you're looking at people who are employees of Blizzard. Supposedly, they should be able to deal with this kind of thing. It's a very interesting thing to see. And to note, of course, that this has been happening in the past. That people have come up, especially Uber guilds, have come up against something. You know, say, Nihilum coming up against Cthulhu is a very good example. Cthulhu got fixed, as in Cthulhu was broken. Why was he broken? Because he was double eye beaming. And that kills pretty much anybody. Nature resistance, port or otherwise. You can't do anything against that, and it's very, very random. You can't stop it. Again, random element in there. Now they changed that, and then suddenly people could down him. It doesn't make him easy, it made him attainable, it made him possible. And there's a certain balance to be found there, and that's fine. I completely accept that. That there is a balance to be found between too easy and too difficult, and it's very difficult to walk that line. But it does seem to me that there's a completely inadequate amount of testing going on with certain encounters. In the sense of you're having changes which are apparently ill thought out, that have simply been thrown in there by looking at a spreadsheet rather than actually trying the encounter out. Again, I cite my example. Double hit points on Gruul. Why exactly was Gruul's hit points doubled like that? Why? And why, was it tested? Unlikely. Very, very unlikely indeed, it has to be said. It's bizarre. Really bizarre right now. So yeah, I do find it somewhat interesting to note that this seems to be the way that things are going. It doesn't bode well, it has to be said, for future content, but then I suppose you could argue if you're going to release a large amount of content at once, then internal testing might not quite be as good as it should be. If you look at the Black Temple, for instance, I would hope that the Black Temple is tested to the point of not being full of bugs and not being too tricky. I want to be able to see evidence that a 25-man team within Blizzard themselves have actually cleared the encounter. Now, if that's the case, then cool. Because if people are wiping on it over and over again for various reasons, and that's just because they just haven't got their head around the encounter, then that's fine, because that's the way things should be. But, if a 25-man testing team can't kill it, then what on earth? You know, how is that supposed to work? So, I can't say that I'm 100% impressed by that. This is something that Blizzard really have to watch out for, because of course, this kind of goes in a parallel with the thing that we were saying last week about difficulty, and that Blizzard really have to be very careful with their endgame content, because the endgame content is the main meat of the game. And if the main meat of the game has issues with it, then the game has issues with it, quite serious issues in fact. And that's not a very healthy way to be. Not whatsoever. Now, you cannot then go on and make the excuse, oh, well, it's okay to have high-end guilds for testing, because no one else is getting in there, therefore it's a minor issue. We'll have it fixed by the time the majority get in there. Not the real way to do things, is it? To be quite honest. Now, if people have fought, and people have spent a lot of time getting into that end of end, you know, the cream of the crop of the end game, they should not have to deal with this kind of rubbish. They really shouldn't. We've got despawning problems. The lurker below is despawning all over the place. We had Kel'Thuzad despawning. It's like, surely that's something they could test. I mean, come on. Now, people might argue, well, you don't understand the server architecture. Yeah, you're right. I don't necessarily understand the server architecture. But is it entirely inconceivable to set up something on a live server? On a semi-live server? You know, the public test realm. What the heck is the public test realm for God's sake? Surely that's an emulation of a live server. It surely is structured in the same way. If despawning issues are a result of bad server hardware and netcode issues, then you've got a game, a massively multiplayer online role-playing game with serious netcode issues and server problems. Now, that says to me that someone didn't do their homework. That's a very bad thing. Now, I can understand that every single little flaw may not be found. Okay, fine. So every single little flaw is not going to be found. Big deal. But the boss should be killable, let's face it. It should be killable, and you really shouldn't be exploiting endgame guilds that should do that. Now, I've had a couple of interesting emails from various people. Tyke has emailed in saying, there might be a reason that Vash is unbeatable. As of now, there hasn't been any speech from Mount Hayal. So if you were to kill Vash, you would at least get one vial for the Hayal prequest, and since Hayal isn't implemented yet, at least so I've heard about it, you may not be able to kill her yet. I know it's a weird idea, but with Blizzard you never know. Now again, that comes back to the idea of rooster block, of putting something deliberately in the way to stop people from progressing. So, I don't know if Hayal is finished yet. I have no idea. But I can't see anyone down in Kael'thas anytime soon either. This is not an excuse, to be quite honest, in my honest opinion. The way that things should be designed is they should be difficult and challenging. Now, you need to take your highest common denominator and make it challenging for them, let them beat it, and let other people work their way up to it. And it may take them a year to do it. And is that a bad thing? Absolutely not. They've got something to aim for. But again, you've got to make sure that it's beatable. And you can't have stuff like that as an excuse. Really, really you can't. Okay, so you've done the Hayal prequest. Oh yeah, we've got to actually put Hayal into the game. Sorry about that. Dear Lord. Sorry, I don't know if it's in the game already. I have no clue whatsoever, obviously. But if it is, then you would have thought it would already be ready, because anything that's reliant on doing something else to get into it should be ready. It's like, say, the Black Temple. Black Temple isn't in there yet. There's no pre-quest for it. There's no attunement for it in the game right now, which means, of course, that no one's expecting to get into it. There's an expectation that if you've done an attunement, then you're actually going to get into this blinking instance. You know. It's tricky. It's tricky to even conceive that anyone would actually design something this way. Now, I don't know if this is the way that it's done, but it's certainly the impression that's being given, and that's a very unhealthy impression to give, because, of course, your hardcore guilds are at the top, other people look up to them. They do. If they quit, it has a major impact on the communities. And if they feel like they're being used as glorified beta testers, then they're gonna get really, really annoyed. I already know this is happening with certain Uber guilds regarding certain encounters, whose names I will not mention, but yeah, it's happening. And I can't imagine they're particularly pleased about that, to be quite honest. Any opinions on this? Email them at when I come after the break. I'm going to delve into something rather intriguing and complex. And it's going to be a comparison. Why do we still play WoW? And what would it take to actually develop something that was better? A WoW beta. You're listening to Blue Please here on WoW Radio with myself, Total Biscuit. I'm not even going to announce the name of this track. You should recognise it immediately as the pure cheese that it is. Enjoy.